Here now, Dan Brouillette, former energy secretary under President Trump. Dan, good to see you this evening. I want to start here with President Biden because this afternoon he took to the stage to talk about COVID-19 vaccinations for children. He took a victory lap on that. In a question, though, he did address inflation and he did address gas prices. Listen to this.
People are upset and uncertain about a lot of things, from COVID to school to jobs to a whole range of things, and the cost of a gallon of gasoline. And so if I'm able to sign into law my Build Back Better initiative, I'm in a position where you're going to see a lot of those things ameliorated.
All right, Dan, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but how does spending $555 billion on clean energy fix inflation and what's happening with gas prices now? Because in the CNN town hall, he said there's no short-term solution, and I'm guessing somebody like Psaki or whoever got to him and said, you can't say that.
Well, Jackie, great to be with you. I'm not sure I have an answer to your question. I'm not quite sure how the government spending more money doesn't add to even more inflation in the economy. I studied economics. I'm maybe more in the Chicago school than not, and my training leads me to believe that will actually encourage inflation, not discourage it.
Look,
I think at the end of the conversation here, what's happening is we're just seeing scarcity in the marketplace, and what's driving the scarcity, I think, as you mentioned and some of your guests mentioned, it's not so much COVID, it's not the pandemic, it's regulatory uncertainty, frankly. It's uncertainty about the climate policies that we're hearing about at COP26. It's uncertainty about financial policies that we're hearing. Banks are being restrictive in their lending. In many cases, that's at the behest of a regulator. We're seeing environmental policies out of the EPA here in the United States, other environmental regulators around the world that are moving very aggressively. All of these things combined are restricting production. And when you restrict production and demand begins to come back, as we're seeing it come back, you're going to have scarcity, which is going to drive the prices up, which is going to lead to inflation.
And thank you so much for laying that out and being so clear about it, because that really is the issue. I want to go through some numbers with you because as former energy secretary, you'll appreciate this. The Saudi Arabians, according to the latest OPEC report, are pumping 9.6 million barrels a day. Russia's pumping anywhere between 10 and 11 million barrels a day. We don't really know because they don't report it on the books, but let's say that that's true. Here in the United States, we're at 11.5 million barrels a day. But we were down as low as 9.7. So we were the world's top oil producer, but then we dropped back under Saudi Arabia, we dropped back under Russia, and gave up that title. And I know that this is something that's in flux right now to a certain degree, but it's really important for people to understand that we held that title under President Trump, and we might not necessarily continue to have it because of these policies from this administration.
Mm-hmm. No, that's exactly right, Jackie. I mean, first time in 60 years, we became the largest producer of oil and gas in the world. We were, in fact, as you pointed out, larger than Saudi Arabia and larger than Russia. The world uses approximately 100 million barrels of oil per day. And in the United States, as you pointed out, we were producing roughly 13% of that. Now, as the demand comes back and we're starting to see that rise to that pre-pandemic level of 100 million barrels per day, and the EIA, the Energy Information Administration, point out that we could be as high as 102 or 103 million barrels per day. If that's true and the world's production continues to decline or stay steady in the high 90s, again, we're going to have that gap in the marketplace. And as long as you have that gap in the marketplace, you're going to have higher prices. Yeah. There's no way to avoid that. It's basic economics.
And one of the things, people always say, oh, well, he came into office, he didn't do anything. He did do a lot. He set out this agenda. He said that he wanted to suspend those new leases on federal lands for drilling, and he also canceled the Keystone Pipeline. One of the points I've always made over the years, Dan, is that no matter how much oil is in the ground, it doesn't really matter if you can't move it around. Pipelines are crucial. That kind of infrastructure is crucial in the United States, and yet that's not something that he wants to spend $1 trillion on.
Right. That's an important point. When you can't get the product to market, it doesn't really matter very much. And in America, we've solved the production problem. As we pointed out, we became the largest producer of oil and gas in the world. So the production problem is solved, and we're solving it with some of the renewable technologies as well. So I don't want to dismiss what's happening in that space. Our challenge now is actually moving the product to market. It's building pipelines, it's building export facilities so that we can get things like natural gas onto the open waters and available to some of these developing countries around the world, like India, like Africa, and to meet the demand that we're seeing in places like China today. That's really our challenge here in America, is getting the permits approved for that type of infrastructure.
Yeah, I went on a project down to Cheniere and I saw one of their LNG export terminals, and that was groundbreaking several years ago. But growth in projects like that is certainly slowing, and it's going to be a problem. Secretary Brouillette, we really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.